Hey, it's Sam from Train of Thought, helping the world of work to be less stressful. Now, before we begin, just make sure to hit that subscribe button in the corner so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. Now, one of the questions I most often get asked when I'm doing my workshops or coaching is, I want to improve myself, I want the workplace to be easier, I want to find new ways of doing things. What should I read? And so I wanted to start a series just looking at the books that have made the biggest impact on me personally and professionally. And we're going to start with the one that's probably made the biggest difference to me, and that is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. According to the line on my edition, it sold over 16 million copies worldwide. And it's also, I believe, the 11th highest selling non-fiction book on Amazon. So it's still being bought by heaps of people today, and hopefully being read and digested by those amounts too. Dale Carnegie was a really interesting guy. So he was born into quite severe poverty in Missouri, and he used to have to wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning to feed the farm animals before making his way to school. He worked hard and he got a job as a traveling salesman and then moved on to be an actor in New York. When that wasn't going exactly how he wanted it to, he had an idea to start a class trying to teach people how to speak in public. And the tale is that he planned this class and very quickly ran out of material. He hadn't planned enough to cover an entire session. So he started kind of making stuff up on the spot. And it went pretty well for him because what he made up on the spot ended up being the foundation of quite a large empire. The Dale Carnegie Institute still exists to this day. He franchised out his courses across the whole of America and became very wealthy and influential doing so. In the kind of early 1930s, a publisher came to him and said, "Do you want to write a book?" He said no. So they wrote up one of his courses and showed him what it would have looked like in the written word and convinced him into writing what became this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. He finished writing it in 1936, and in 1937 this was published. And it kind of reinvigorated the self-help personal development genre, which was had been sleeping or dormant at the time. So what's the book about? Well, more than anything, it is a guide to human behaviour. It's a guide to how people act. And the whole point of the book is that by understanding how people act and developing some tools for how you treat people, you can get more of what you want because you'll help them to get more of what they want too. It's about how people work. And it's so good. It's so good. When I read this, it was like reading the most obvious book in the world, which I think is a really good thing when you're reading a personal development book. Everything he said was just so obviously right and true and useful. That was my impression. I mean, it's not perfect by any means, but you're just reading through it and you're just going, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if we look through what the book covers, so it's got 4 sections. Part 1 is fundamental techniques in handling people, so kind of foundations of human behavior and human interaction. Part 2 is 6 ways to make people like you, so how to improve your charm and your likability. Part 3 is how to win people to your way of thinking, how to be more influential or convincing. And part 4, be a leader, how to change people without giving offence or arousing resentment. So leadership, how to improve other people, help them in their development, help them change. Which, by the way, is easily the most frequent thing that comes up when I'm doing my workshops or consultancy or coaching, which is how can we help our people to have what's called difficult conversations, which we will definitely cover in a different video. So those are all really useful bits. And if you look within the chapters themselves, super useful. So how to interest people, how to make people like you instantly. You can't win an argument. If you're wrong, admit it. How to get cooperation. If you must find fault, this is the way to begin. No one likes to take orders. I mean, it's just chock full of really useful and really importantly, really tangible things. This book is about behavior. It's about the way you act. In its theory is empathy can help everyone win. It's a win-win book. So if you find out what other people want, how they act, how they believe, how their view of the world, and you start to help them to achieve what they want, then they will help to achieve what you want, you to achieve what you want too. It's reciprocal, and you create a kind of virtuous circle. And acknowledging that most people won't do it. Most people, one of the big pieces of advice he gives in here is to listen intently and hear what people have to say. I mean, the one I just opened to, become genuinely interested in other people. The assumption is most people won't do that. They just won't. So you can, and you will gain an advantage, but not at other people's expense. You'll gain an advantage because they'll gain an advantage too. And that's a wonderful sentiment. For me, what I think Dale Carnegie understands is our insecurities and our vulnerabilities. He understands the things that get in our way, that prevent us being the people we could be. And at any moment, if someone in front of you is insecure or they're vulnerable, you have a choice. You can either feed that insecurity and vulnerability, which we often do by accident because we're focused on our insecurity and vulnerability, or you can actually try and help them to feel good about themselves, to bring out the best in themselves. And by doing so, they'll be encouraged to do the same for you. It just works. It's just so simple. I think there are some... How the chapters are structured are that he'll introduce the topic he's talking to. He'll give some anecdotes about the topic, and there'll be some good quotes, and it all ladder up to a kind of principle at the end. So this chapter's called How to Interest People, and the principle is talk in terms of other people's interests. Talk about the things they love and know. So he makes it really easy to digest. It's chapter by chapter. And if you're struggling with something, you get to the principle and you go, be a good listener, encourage others to talk about themselves. You can kind of go back and read that chapter, which I think makes it really easy too. Some of the anecdotes are outdated. They were updated, I think, this was updated in the kind of 1980s, but some of it, when he talks about salesmen in lumber and some of the... for example, there's a letter from Lincoln. My dear General, I do not believe you appreciate the magnitude of the misfortune involved in Lee's escape. The principles are timeless, but I think for those of us less interested in history, that's probably a little bit more difficult. I think the one big watch out with How to Win Friends is you could read the whole thing, put it into practice, and miss the point entirely. When he talks about doing these things for other people, he mean it. Genuinely and authentically be sincere in your love, your appreciation, your care, your empathy. I think it's very easy to read this and see it as a way to manipulate people, and I think it's very possible to do so. That's one of its main criticisms. Stephen Covey, who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which we'll definitely be covering, clearly was not a fan of this book. He thought it was insincere. I think Dale Carnegie clearly intends people to mean it, but it could be a bit of a Machiavellian, how to manipulate people. Again, some of it's outdated. There's a lot to take in, which I think can sometimes feel a bit overwhelming. But either way, it's an incredible book. I think at its heart, it's about developing empathy for other people. It's about developing the ability to look through the eyes of someone else, to sit there with someone and really understand where they're coming from so that you can give to them and they can give to you in return. It's completely... Warren Buffett says on the front, Carnegie changed my life. And I feel the same way. The road I ended up on to doing what I do now, this book was a huge initial stepping stone in that journey. And if I had to recommend one book to help people improve their relationships, the way they treat other people, the way they work with others, this would always be the top one. But I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear if you've read it, what your experience was, if you are going to read it, how you found it. Please comment below. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on anything else. But I hope that you are able to go out and win more friends and influence people. And until we speak again, take care. Can't you see?